Hello everybody, my name is Emma and this is Emma Rose and Books. Today I want to do for you my November wrap up. I thought for a change I'd sit in front of the Christmas tree. We actually put this up really early. This has been up for over a week already. You know how other people have like these beautiful Christmas trees where it's like, oh, we only have like blue and silver or whatever it is. Ours is like Santa was sick on it. We've got a mixture of old decorations that we've been given by our parents. Actually, let me show you the worst one. It's up here. This, I can remember being on my tree when I was little, and it's a really gross little sweaty robin. So he actually sits right at the front, embarrassingly. But there's, you know, things that kids have made and all sorts, and I like it. I mean, every bauble's different, nothing matches, all the colours are all off, so, you know, it's good fun. So there's that for your backdrop. I had a good reading month this month. Normally I average, I would say, sort of 4, possibly 5 books a month, but I read 6 this month, so that was really good for me. So I know other people read loads, but yeah, for me that was quite a lot. So the first book that I read this month was Thud by Terry Pratchett. Now this, I made a video about my feelings about Terry Pratchett because I actually read 2 Pratchett books this month. And so this was the first one that I read. Let me read you the synopsis. Coombe Valley, that was where the trolls ambushed the dwarfs, or the dwarfs ambushed the trolls. It was far away, it was a long time ago. But if he doesn't solve the murder of just one dwarf, Commander Sam Vimes of Ankh-Morpork City Watch is going to see it fought again right outside his office. With his beloved watch crumbling around him and war drums sounding, he must unravel every clue, outwit every assassin and brave any darkness to find the solution, and darkness is following him. Oh, and at 6 o'clock every day, without fail, with no excuses, he must go home to read Where's My Cow, with all the right farmyard noises, to his little boy. There are some things you have to do. And so each Pratchett book generally has themes that it has themes. And the ones for Thud were chess and also kind of racial tensions. So you've got the tensions between the dwarfs and the trolls, and you've got tensions between vampires and kind of everybody, but mostly vampires and werewolves, and looking at it on a personal level, so a vampire and a werewolf working together and how they react to one another, and kind of people's prejudices of the vampire, and also generally the dwarfs and the trolls and how they get on a international level, and then how that influences within the city of Ankh-Morpork. The chess bits, there really wasn't that much, and I just felt like to even, like, it was kind of named after the game Thud, which is the version of chess in the book, but there wasn't that much of it in there, and the bits that were in there weren't that interesting, I didn't think. The bits looking at the ideas of the relationships between the different, I don't know whether you'd call them species or races, they're, you know, fantasy creatures in this book, were very interesting for mimicking how, you know, tensions between different countries and between, you know, individuals from different places and that kind of thing, and looking at how that happens. And that's one of the strengths of Pratchett books, is the way that it kind of looks at people's behaviour. So that was good, but the chess bits, not so much for me. The other thing is I'm not a big fan of the Watch books. There's been a couple, like I really like Jingo and Men at Arms, but a lot of the Watch ones I find a little bit boring. And I don't particularly like Commander Vimes, so if it's really heavy on him, then I do get a little bit bored. And the humour, which is one of the main things for me, like the little footnotes and just the kind of stupid phrases and all of that, there just wasn't much of that. There was a bit in the beginning and I felt like it really petered out and it was very plot heavy, but then the plot wasn't that interesting. So this is totally not one of my favourites. I love Pratchett books, as I talked about in the video that I made, but not this one. So I'm actually not going to keep this because I'm not going to read it again, but I'm glad that I had a refresher on what it was actually about. Then I read You Me Everything by Catherine Isaac. So the blurb for this one: Jess and her 10-year-old son William set off to spend the summer at Chateau de Rossignol, deep in the undulating hills and lush vineyards of the Dordogne. There, her ex-boyfriend Adam runs an exquisite hotel in a restored castle and has had little to do with his son's upbringing. But Jess is in France for a more urgent reason than a holiday. She is fulfilling the wishes of her mother, who, in the late stages of a neurodegenerative disease, is determined that William needs his father in his life. Over one heady, sun-drenched summer, bridges are built and secrets are uncovered, but there is one truth that nobody, especially William, must discover. So the reason why I was interested in this, firstly, I have seen it doing the rounds a bit, and secondly, I like the idea of the theme between the mother and the son and sort of their relationship. Sorry, I keep sitting on presents if you hear rustling. So the boy in this is 10, my son is 8, so I thought that would be a fun dynamic to read about from my point of view. It's got a cool thing as well where the front cover has got like it doesn't quite meet the edge, and then there's more reviews and a picture of France. Kind of cool. Anyway, so, or did I say that Thud was 3 stars? I don't know. Thud was 3 stars. Anyway, back to You, Me, Everything. I wasn't a big fan of this book either. I thought that the theme of the neurodegenerative disease, I don't want to talk too much about that because it would be spoilers, that was really good. I think it was beautifully written and added a really interesting aspect to the whole story. So I liked that, and it was thought-provoking and emotional and all of that kind of thing. The mother and son relationship thing, well, the son I felt was written very young. I mean, some of the ways that the son behaves and some of the things that he says, my 8-year-old wouldn't be like that, and the child felt a lot younger than 10. I don't know if that's just me, but to me I just felt uncomfortable that when they were trying to make out, oh, he's on the verge of teenagehood and that's why he's having like these angry outbursts and that's why he's, you know, he just, it didn't quite read right. So I was disappointed in that side of things. Also, there are an awful lot of other characters. So Jess, the main character, on this holiday to go and visit her ex-boyfriend, she ends up with some of her other friends coming with her. So I think there's 2 other couples that come. And they just felt like they weren't needed. They didn't really bring anything particularly to the plot, in my opinion. I can kind of see why they were there, but it to me, I would have liked it to have been more about just those core relationships and the extra people in it, just not to be there, like just have longer scenes and focus more on that, and sort of vague love interests and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, I just found all of that a little bit irritating, and made it a bit frivolous, I suppose. That it could have been very beautiful and heart-wrenching, and I think to me it missed the mark because there were just too many bits that just took away from that, in my opinion. So I gave it 3 stars. Like, it was readable and I wanted to know what happened, and like I said, really liked the neurodegenerative disease aspect of it because I thought that was very clever and lovely, but, well, not lovely, obviously, it's very upsetting, but the way it was handled. Yeah. Oh, and also Adam, the ex, is just a bit written as like this really annoying guy, but then also Mr. Perfect at the same time, and yeah, didn't like him either, so 3 stars for that one. Okay, then the next one that I read this month was Midnight Blue. This was one of my book club books. Last month I had The House at the Edge of the World. I got the 2 together because I think I explained on the last video we did a lucky dip, and so we had the book was wrapped up and it just had a quote on it. So this one had the quote that's on the back that says, "Weaves fact and fiction into a gripping story." So we just picked the ones that we fancied, and then unwrapped them and saw what we had. I thought this was a very interesting book. It's by Simone van der Vlugt. I don't know, I don't speak, why have I gone Dutch? That took me a moment. I was like, Danish? No. Anyway, so I'll read the blurb again. 1654, following the death of her young husband, Katrin Barentsdochter takes a job as a housekeeper in Amsterdam. The city is flourishing, and as she assists her mistress with painting lessons, she dreams of developing her own skill as an artist. But when the past catches up with her, Catherine must leave behind the comfortable security of her new home for the smaller city of Delft. There she is introduced to Evert van Newland, owner of a pottery factory. Working together they dream of replicating the prized blue and white porcelain arriving from the Far East, and Catherine dreams of a life in which her secret stays safely buried. This was a really interesting book. So there are characters in it that are real, there are aspects about it that are real. It looks at the introduction of the blue and white pottery, but that's fictionalised. So there are some characters in it that are real, but the people that come up with it aren't real. It's a fictionalised version of that. So what I really enjoyed about this book is the fact that there was some reality in it, the fact that you had other aspects as well as like looking at the pottery, that it looked at the way life was a little bit, and also it looked at the plague, which and fires and things like that, and I really enjoyed that and the impact that that had, and thinking about kind of what that would have done. I just thought it was a very interesting premise, and it kept me, you know, reading it. The things that maybe I didn't like so much, it's translated very, very well, but there are occasions when the speech is maybe too modern, but it's not too bad. And also the main character is a little bit annoying, and she also has this whole kind of secret that she's trying to hide, which is pretty evident what the secret is, and this guy who's blackmailing her, and it was okay, but she was just a little bit irritating. I don't know how better to phrase it really, but in general I did really enjoy this book. I gave it 4 stars. It was, you know, an enjoyable read. Then the next thing that I read was on audiobooks on my phone. I broke my phone. This is my replacement phone, and it's like really broken and whatever. Anyway, so I listened on Overdrive. I use Overdrive because I can get library books on there, and I listened to Sapiens. I've done a review of this, which I'll link above, so I don't want to go into too much detail. Sapiens is kind of a history of the human species, from our kind of biology to our actual history, bringing us up to the modern day, and it's the pre-runner of probably Homo Deus, which I'd really like to read actually. Sapiens is by Yuval Noah Hurari, and it's translated from Israeli. I gave the book 5 stars. And as I said, I talked about it a little bit in more detail, but to give an overview, I found it very interesting. Initially, I thought that the bits it talked about at the beginning, I was like, oh yeah, I know all of this, because I used to teach human biology, so I know a reasonable amount about evolution and the biology of our genus and that kind of stuff. But then it just got more and more interesting, and there was more and more stuff I didn't know about, particularly history, and the way it looked at history of like, okay, so we know that, you know, the Western world invaded whichever countries, you know, or I know about the Dutch East India Company, or I know about, you know, but why? Why did those particular countries have such success? And what were... I really liked that about it. The only criticism I could give it, which I talked about in the review, is that I listened to it on audiobook and I didn't like the narrator at all. I found his voice sounded like Siri, and that bothered me, even though, you know, he was a narrator, it wasn't an electronic voice, but it just, because it sounded a bit like Siri, it was just making me a bit of a... And then also all of the numbers are read out in an American number format, despite the fact it's an English narrator. So like the numbers, so the date would be like 2001 rather than 2001, and I would always say and, or like, you know, a number like 138 would be 138, so there was never an and it really jarred. So yeah, I just found him a bit irritating, and I've since found out, somebody commented on one of my on my review video, that the actual book has got like little illustrations and extra bits, which obviously I missed out on. So I think I gave it 5 stars anyway, because I thought it was an excellent book, but my enjoyment of it was spoilt by that. So I would actually really like to go back and read the the physical copy of it so that I can benefit from the added extras and kind of enjoy the experience a little bit more. But I thought it was an excellent book and well worth a read. The next book that I read was another audiobook one. Oh, and by the way, Sapiens, I'd had rumbling on for like 2 or 3 months because I had problems with it being returned because I didn't finish it in time, and then I had to go on a wait list to borrow it again and stuff, so it just took me ages. It's actually been like an ongoing thing for, I started reading it, started listening to it months ago, and then finished it off this month. So then I listened to another Pratchett, which is Unseen Academicals, so I'll stick a thing up here. Unseen Academicals is another of the later books. I just saw that there were some Pratchetts on Overdrive, and since I was in the mood, I thought I'd read one that I hadn't read. So yeah, this is one of the later ones, and its themes are football and modelling for the most part. So I'll read you the blurb. Football has come to the ancient city of Ankh-Morpork, not the old-fashioned, grubby pushing and shoving, but the new, fast football with pointy hats for goalposts and balls that go gloing when you drop them. And now the wizards of Unseen University must win a football match without using magic, so they're in the mood for trying everything else. The prospect of the big match draws in a likely lad with a wonderful talent for kicking a tin can, a maker of jolly good pies, a dim but beautiful young woman who might just turn out to be the greatest fashion model there has ever been, and the mysterious Mr. Nut. No one knows anything much about Mr. Nut, not even Mr. Nut, which worries him too. As the match approaches, 4 lives are entangled and changed forever, because the thing about football, the important thing about football, is that it is not just about football. Here we go, here we go, here we go. So this was an interesting concept, and I thought that the actual themes worked a lot better than in Thud. The way that football was talked about was very interesting, and talking about kind of the way that the crowd reacts to it and the way people feel about football was very good. The main character, or well, one of the main characters, whose name I can't remember actually, the lady who's the cook. What is her name? She is called Glenda. Glenda was a really interesting character, and I thought she was very well written. And Mr. Nut is very mysterious. This book is based around the Unseen University, so it's got lots of wizard stuff in. I really like that, and there were some cameos from Rincewind and from the librarian. It had some big Lord Vetinari bits, which I quite like him, and the dog. And it introduced some new characters that haven't been in it before. There's also a load of stuff with Ponder Stibbons that's quite cool. His character has developed a lot, and the way that he's kind of responsible for a lot of the running of the university, because he's the only person who's actually got like any kind of organisational skills. Yeah, I thought this one was handled an awful lot better. It was more interesting. It was also more readable. I wasn't that keen on the beginning, it took me a bit of time to get into it, and I also wasn't that keen on the end, but the chunk of the middle I really liked and was interested in what was happening. The same as with Thud though, I felt that it was missing the real comedy stuff. So it was still very thoughtful about how people think and people's relationships and all that kind of stuff, and how people behave, but it was just still missing that kind of comic thing. Well, it was there, but just, again, just not strongly enough. There were a couple of little bits that made me giggle, and of course I don't expect it. It's not a comedy book, but it is comic fantasy, and it's what I love, the humour of Terry Pratchett, the same as I love the humour in Douglas Adams' books. So if it's missing, it's one of the main things that I love about those books. So yeah, again, it's just the way I feel about those later books. As I said on my other video about Terry Pratchett, I like them, but they're not on the same level for me as the earlier ones. So that one, 3.5 stars. It's a bit better than Thud, but not the best. Then finally this month I've read Wilderness Tips by Margaret Atwood. So this is a collection of short stories. It says, a leathery bogman transforms into an old love affair, a sweet gruesome gift is sent by the wife of an ex-lover, landscape paintings are haunted by the ghost of a young girl. This dazzling collection of 10 short stories takes us into familiar Atwood territory to reveal the logic of irrational behaviour and the many textures lying beneath ordinary life. I really hoped that I would enjoy this because I loved The Handmaid's Tale. It's one of the best books I've read this year, and I usually do like short stories. I don't read them very much, but because obviously the usual thing is because they're short, they're punchy, and I expected them to be really shocking because you know, that's my experience of Atwood. It would be something maybe like really political or really insightful, or, and I just didn't feel that way. I was bored by most of the stories in it. I wonder, I looked up some reviews online because I thought, well, surely, like, Atwood is just a really well-regarded author, surely I've got it wrong. And a lot of people were saying that if you're Canadian, it makes more sense, because I don't have that cultural heritage of understanding like the settings and the people, and obviously I understood a bit of it, but I mean, like, the first story is set in a like one of these youth holiday camps, and they don't really exist in the same way in this country, so I don't really get it. I don't have a cultural perception of it. So I actually think that probably was a big part of the issue. Hairball was really interesting, where it talks about this woman has a growth that she has removed, and I think just because it was kind of revolting, I quite liked that one, and she seemed like an interesting character. But other than that, I just wasn't bothered or particularly interested. So, I don't know, maybe if you're Canadian, then you'll like this. But, I mean, the thing was, the writing was beautiful. It was clearly well written and well thought out and all of that. It just didn't do it for me at all. So I gave it 3 stars because actually I really didn't enjoy it, and in some ways it would be 2 stars. However, because of the writing, I gave it 3. And yeah, like I said, maybe if you were American or Canadian and you just had a little bit more relationship with these characters, and then perhaps you might like it better. But yeah, for me, I was just really disappointed. I wanted it to be better. So actually, I'm not keeping any of these. So like I said, I'm going to charity shop Thud. I'm going to also charity You Me Everything and Wilderness Tips. I got both of these at the charity shop anyway, so I'm just going to give them back because I'm not going to read them again, so there's no point. Midnight Blue was a library book, so that's going back as well, so not keeping any of them. If I had Sapiens, I would keep it, but it was an audiobook lend thing, so. Anyway, what am I reading at the moment? I'm reading some ghost story thing. Oh, it's called Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. So I'll talk about that in my December wrap up, along with the other books that I get around to reading over the next month, the Christmas season, which is pretty full on for me actually. If you would like to, please subscribe for more content about writing and about reading and just books in general. Please leave me a comment if you'd like to, if you've read any of these books, you have opinions on any of these books. It's really nice to get into a discussion about them in the comments below. Like if you did, and equally there are links to all of my social media stuff if you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. That's it. Or if you want to sign up to my monthly newsletter, which you can access via my website, or if you want to buy my book, there are links below to my book, which is called Milk, and it's a story about my experiences breastfeeding and then all the stuff that I learned as well about the biology and society stuff and history stuff and politics stuff, all to do with breastfeeding. So anyway, all that stuff is in the down bar. I hope that you have a lovely reading month, and I will see you all again for my next one. Bye!